"I'm not your pet," the Vulpine girl said, right before curling up in his lap. Rain-slicked streets glistened under the dim glow of neon signs, painting the city in streaks of electric blue and crimson. Julian trudged through puddles, his trench coat clinging to him like a second skin. He wasn't expecting company tonight, or anything out of the ordinary, but the sharp yip that echoed from the alley behind the cafe made him pause. Curiosity won over caution. He peeked into the narrow passageway and froze. There she was, a girl no taller than 5 feet, crouched atop a stack of abandoned crates. Her hair shimmered a fiery orange that seemed almost alive under the wet light, and her ears, soft fox-like, twitched with every sound. Her tail swished behind her in restless agitation. "I'm not anyone's pet," she said sharply, her golden eyes narrowing as she glared at him. "And I don't take orders from humans." Julian raised his hands in surrender, trying not to startle her further. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said, voice calm. "I just heard a noise." The Vulpine girl's ears flattened. "Noise? That sounded like someone trying to catch me. Are you a hunter?" Julian shook his head. "No, just someone who might help. Maybe." He stepped closer, careful to keep his movements slow. "You don't look like you belong on the streets in this rain." Her gaze softened for only a moment before the wariness returned. "I belong wherever I want." She shifted on the crates, her tail curling protectively around her legs. "Especially away from people like you." He crouched down to her level, offering a small, tentative smile. "Then maybe I can at least offer you dry shelter. No questions, no strings attached." Her ears flicked at that, and she tilted her head. "Why would a human want to do that?" "Because," he said slowly, "sometimes even the world's loneliest creatures deserve a break." Her tail twitched, and her eyes, luminous in the rain, softened again. Against her instincts, she stepped closer to him, each movement careful, deliberate. Julian led her to his apartment, a small space above a rundown bookshop. The warmth hit her first, radiating off the old heater near the window, then the scent of his modest dinner, noodles and herbs simmering quietly. She hovered by the doorway, still on guard. "I'm not staying," she warned. "I don't do staying." "Okay," he replied, pouring a cup of water for her. "Just rest for a moment. No commitments." The Vulpine girl eyed the cup, then delicately lapped at it like an animal might. Julian watched, heart strangely heavy, realizing the girl's world had been one of survival, not comfort. The night passed quietly. Rain tapped against the window, and the neon from the street below filtered in through the blinds. She finally stepped closer, brushing against his legs, a silent apology or a test. Julian sat on the edge of his couch. "I'm not your pet," she said again, her voice firmer this time, as if reminding herself of her independence. "I know," he said softly. "You're not. You don't have to be." Pause stretched between them. Then, slowly, impossibly, she curled up in his lap, resting her head against his thigh. Julian froze, unsure if he should move or let her stay. Her warmth seeped into him, melting away the exhaustion he hadn't realized he carried. "You're really warm," she murmured, eyes half closed. "Too warm for a stranger." Julian chuckled softly. "I'm glad it's okay." "Don't get used to it," she said with a faint, playful growl. Her tail flicked once before settling around her body, the gesture oddly protective. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds. She stirred first, stretching like a wild creature waking in a safe haven for the first time. Julian watched her, amazed at the way something so fierce could also be so vulnerable. I have to go, she said, sliding off his lap, brushing her tail against the floor. The streets, they won't wait. I understand, he said, though a part of him wished she wouldn't leave. But if you ever need shelter again, you know where to find me. Her ears twitched. I'll remember. Don't expect me to come running. He smiled. I wouldn't dream of it. She paused at the door, looking back at him. For a heartbeat, her golden eyes betrayed uncertainty, a flicker of something softer. Trust, maybe. Then, with a final flick of her tail, she slipped into the alley, vanishing into the city's chaotic rhythm. Days turned into weeks. Julian found himself glancing at the alley often, hoping, but he didn't push. Then, one evening, the neon-lit rain returned, and so did she. Just as unpredictable, just as independent. She leapt onto his windowsill, ears perked, tail flicking. You're still here, she said, half accusing, half teasing. I never left, he said, opening the window. You're welcome anytime. She studied him, eyes narrowing, then finally, with that same wild elegance, she jumped down into his lap. This time she didn't pull away. I'm not your pet, she whispered again, but her tone held something softer. Not yet. Julian laughed quietly, stroking the soft, fiery strands of her hair. And you don't have to be. You just can be here. If you want. For the first time, the Vulpine girl allowed herself to simply be. Safe, warm, and, perhaps, willing to trust that sometimes a human could offer something more than danger, could offer companionship. She curled against him fully, tail brushing his arm, ears flicking at every sound, but no longer tense. Outside, the city roared on, uncaring, chaotic. But inside that small apartment, warmth and quiet companionship reigned, fragile and fleeting, yet perfect in its own way. And for the first time, neither had to fight alone. Days turned into weeks, and Julian found himself glancing toward the alley often, hoping, but not expecting, to see her again. He understood her wild nature. She belonged to the streets, to the rain-slicked city, and to no one. Still, a small part of him longed for her presence, however brief it might be. Then, one evening, the familiar neon glow bounced off wet asphalt, and she appeared. Her fiery hair caught the light like flames, and her golden eyes scanned the street before landing on him. Without hesitation, she leapt onto his windowsill, tail flicking in that familiar, restless rhythm. You're still here, she said, voice teasing, a hint of warmth hidden beneath her guarded tone. I never left, Julian replied, opening the window. You're welcome anytime. She studied him for a long moment, her gaze sharp but thoughtful. Then, almost as if testing him, she jumped into his lap. Her body was tense at first, ears flicking nervously, tail curling around her, but she didn't pull away. I'm not your pet, she whispered again, her voice firmer than before, but softer this time, carrying a subtle trace of trust. You don't have to be, Julian said gently, running a hand through her fiery hair. You can just be here. If you want. She settled against him, tail brushing his arm, ears twitching at the distant city sounds. Outside, the world continued its endless chaos, but inside that small apartment, a fragile peace settled between them. She was still wild, still independent, but now she allowed herself to lean into warmth and safety, if only for a moment. And Julian understood in that quiet, shared space that companionship didn't always mean ownership. Sometimes it simply meant being there unconditionally for someone who had every right to run. And for the first time, neither of them felt completely alone.